Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick, illustrator for Gina K Designs, and I'm so grateful you could join me today. I have a really fun card project I want to share with you. It's full of watercolor layers and some pattern paper stamping and lots of really fun techniques along the way. And I have a friend who's kind of struggling a little bit with some things going on in her life, and I really thought it would be fun to give her this card and share this project with you. And I love this sentiment. Life is tough, my darling, but so are you. And this is just going to be so much fun. So here's the brand new 6x6 background stamp called Diagonal Stripe that I'm going to be using in today's project. I'm also going to be using the Where Flowers Bloom, this beautiful stamp set from Gina K Designs and Thermoweb. I just love these leaf elements and they're going to be perfect for this project. I'm also using Emily Schropfner's from Gina K Designs, this beautiful stamp set, lettered in lovely. I just love the stamp set. You've seen me use it quite a bit. And I'm also going to be using some of the blooms, some of the bits and baubles, and the splatter from the Hello Beautiful stamp set from Gina K as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I have a piece of watercolor paper trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm definitely going to be trimming it down a little bit more after everything is stamped. And here is a piece of the Gina K Designs black cardstock cut to an A2 size card. And here are the Gina K inks that I'm going to be using. I just love these. I have Wild Dandelion, Tangerine Twist, Key Lime. Oh, I just love that color. I have Passionate Pink, which shows up in almost every video, Innocent Pink, and the Wild Dandelion. I'm also going to be using a mister with some water, and this mister has a little bit of Perfect Pearls in there, but you really don't need that to have Perfect Pearls for this project. And I'm using these two Distress Oxide inks, and of course I'm using the amalgam ink because it's perfect for watercolor stamping, and it's now my go-to choice for doing these kind of techniques. I love it. Okay, I'm also going to be using some black Nuvo drops to just put in the center of the flowers, and I'm bringing out this oldie but a goodie little miniature stapler to just kind of attach the sentiment. Okay, so we're going to move on, and I'm going to share how to create that background piece that's going to help ground all the elements on this card. And I'm using the Diagonal Stripe 6x6 background stamp, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to use it in my Misty here so that I can create that plaid tartan fabric look and change up the colors along the way. So I've taken out that foam piece that's inside the Misty, and I've cut a piece of the Gina K white cardstock to a 6x6 and put it inside the Misty here. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up the 6x6 stamp, but I am going to ink it up with multiple colors on the diagonal. So I'm going to go, so that's how I get that really kind of fun multicolored look and feel on the pattern paper. So these are the 3 inks that I'm going to be using: Passionate Pink, Tangerine Twist, Wild Dandelion, and Key Lime. So I'm just inking up the stripes, just following the line of the stripes and just inking it up down and changing the colors along the way. And I'm overlapping the colors a little bit. So that's kind of fun because you'll get a multicolor look when you overlap, and it gives you a really nice effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and ink all of this up all the way down and get this multicolor look happening. And I just love this technique. It's super fun, and you can really see where the 2 colors are starting to kind of blend together. And this color combination is bright and happy and super, super fun. So to kind of get it activated, before I stamp, I just kind of misted it just a little bit with the water. Not too much to make it watery, but just a little bit to just activate those colors before I went ahead and stamped it. So you can see the multicolor look and feel. It's very rainbow look, very summery and springy. But then I went ahead and turned the whole piece of paper by a 1/4 turn. Okay, and then went back in, and right now I'm just going back in with the multiple colors in the same way that I did before. I started with the pink, Passionate Pink, then the Tangerine Twist, then the Wild Dandelion, then the Key Lime, then back to the Passionate Pink, and back to the orange Tangerine Twist, and finishing it off with the Wild Dandelion. And just went ahead and misted it again, and then stamped it down. And because we had that quarter turn with the diagonal going in one direction, now we've got that complete plaid look, but the colors have overlapped and it's kind of super fun. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to build the card base. And this is just going to be so much fun. I am taking the leaf element from the Where Flowers Bloom, and this is going to be my main leaf element, and I really love that. So I just inked it up with some key lime and misted it with a little bit of water and stamped it down onto the watercolor paper, and it's got a watercolor look to it without it being too wet. So I'm also using the open line, the silhouette version of the leaf with the line art detail, and did the same thing. Just inked it up with the key lime and then hit it with a little bit of water and then stamped it down. So this is a really great way to do watercolor effects that are a little more dry. So I've got the other leaf element, the other fern element from the Hello Beautiful stamp set, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm using the Wild Dandelion, and I really love how the Wild Dandelion and the key lime come together, and because they're transparent, because the dye inks are transparent, they come together really nicely and you can see both colors. So again, just inking up the stamp, misting it a little bit, not too much because I don't want it to be too watery, and stamping it down. So I'm kind of creating this like fauna, ferny like flourish over on the left hand side. So I'm going to come in here now with a little bit of the Innocent Pink and do the same thing. Ink it up, give it a little mist, and take this leaf element from the Hello Beautiful stamp set and stamp it down to get kind of a soft kind of effect to it. And that pink color is really going to help bring out the blooms that I am going to be layering on top. So we're getting a nice mix of pinks and greens and yellows to kind of make everything bright, and it's the same color palette as I used in the creation of the pattern paper, so everything will complement each other and coordinate with each other very, very well. Sometimes that's like a big question, what colors to use and how to use them. So this is one of the ways that I do it. Okay, so I've got the splatter stamp here, and I'm just using Innocent Pink, and I'm just kind of splattering it down in a couple places just as a layering element. Okay, I went ahead and I took the blooms that I'm going to be creating here and pre-stamped them with the amalgam ink, and I'm going to be doing some watercoloring with these two colors, the Distress Oxide inks. The Picked Raspberry and Spice Marmalade, this color combination works very, very well together. I'm also sharing my favorite watercolor brushes, and these are silver brushes from Black Velvet. I really, really love them. This is a number 4. Normally I use a water brush, but today I wanted to use a regular paintbrush. You could use any kind of brush that you're comfortable with. Now I'm just mixing up the color a little bit. I'm going to mix a little bit of that Picked Raspberry in with some of the Spice Marmalade as well. But right now what I'm doing is getting a really light wash of color down on these two blooms, and I'm just watering down the Distress Oxides, really, really watering everything down just to get a nice little layer onto the watercolor paper. This technique is called underpainting. It's when you're getting your first layer of color down so that you can build some more layers on top. And the reason why I'm using the Distress Oxide inks instead of the dye inks is because I really wanted kind of a sherbety, milky like effect, and the Distress Oxide inks are perfect for that. So you can see that I am not heating it, but drying it off in between layers because I want to go ahead and add another layer on top. And the Distress Oxide inks are work really well with the water and heat. Water and heat, they kind of activate and become that creamy color. So I've taken the Passionate Pink dye ink and I've put some of it down on my craft mat and added a little bit of water. And I'm going in over top of the Distress Oxide work that I've already done with some of the dye-based inks. Now, when you're working with the dye-based inks to do watercolor, you really have to work a little quicker and everything needs to be a little wetter. Things need to be wet. Otherwise, that dye ink wants to sit right on top of the paper and kind of it won't give you a nice little smoothie blend. So if you keep it nice and wet, you're going to get those beautiful watercolor effects that you're trying to achieve. So I went ahead and just kind of heat this up to dry it in between. Whenever you want to add more layers on top and on top and on top of something that you're painting, you're just going to dry everything or let it dry in between. But I really needed to get this dry so that I could fussy cut it out. So I went ahead and fussy cut out the two blooms, and now I'm just matching it up with this very large piece of pattern paper that we already stamped out. And I want to create a strip, so I'm just kind of positioning everything in and seeing how I want it to look and how big of a strip I want to take off of this piece of pattern paper. So I'm starting with a 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look and see if that's wide enough. And I think it is. I really want to ground those blooms underneath that are going to sit on top, and I really want some of that pattern to show but not be too obtrusive. So I'm just going to trim off just a little bit, like a little 1/16 of an inch here. Just trim it down just a smidge to just kind of get it in a place where I think it's going to be less bulky. And I really, really like that. And look at that color combination. So when you're using the same colors, but you're using them in different areas of your project, they really, really, really do complement each other. So I really didn't like the strip that I had cut. It had a little boogered up spot at the bottom. So I went ahead and cut another piece that I thought looked a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay this strip down and just kind of position my blooms over top to get a good look at what I've got going here and see if I want to add anything. And because I kind of covered up so much of that pink leaf at the top of the strip, I really want to go in and add another piece in here just for some color pop. And I'm not going to mist it with the water. So what I've got here is a really, really nice dark pink that's a really nice contrast to this pattern paper strip that I created with the diagonal stripe stamped. So I'm really digging that. I think the color combinations are working, and I'm going to trim off a little bit of this strip so that it doesn't go edge to edge and it kind of ends underneath the blooms. So you get that organic look from the left of all the things that I stamped. I didn't want to cover up all those leaf elements. So just giving this a little trim and just getting it prepared to put together. So I went ahead and put the bloom down, and yippity yip, I love it. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of foam squares to just give that smaller bloom, that layering bloom, a little bit of pop. Not too much dimension. I tend to not add a lot of dimension to my projects because I mail them or I give them to people and I don't want to get that too much height in the project. Okay, so here's the fun project. Here's the fun next step. The piece that I am stamping the sentiment on is a piece that came in the mail. So it's like a piece of linen vellum that came in the mail as part of packaging of a product that I recently purchased. So I really liked it as a pattern and I thought it would be fantastic on my paper crafting and card projects. So I just decided to die cut the piece out and we're going to use it for today's sentiment. So I'm just getting my MISTI ready to go because I don't trust myself a little bit. I've got this circle here. It's about a 2-inch circle and my sentiment is going to fit in there perfectly. And yes, I could free range stamp it, but hey, why not use the MISTI? Because I'm going to have to hit this and stamp it probably 2 or 3 times with the amalgam ink so that I can get a nice solid black, because this paper is not not a plain white cardstock. It's got this linen vellum finish to it. So it's going to need a little bit of extra stamping to it. So I just went ahead and inked up the stamp with the amalgam ink. I really love this amalgam ink. It's just such a nice, solid black. And I'm just going to go ahead and ink it up again and stamp it down 2 times. And the Misty just makes it perfect. You know you're going to get it lined up every single time. And it's perfect. I love this. Life is tough, my darling, but so are you. Okay, so here's where I'm going to, there's a little bit of a flubby here. Okay, so I wanted to put this piece of vellum on and just kind of have it on here with a staple, just to kind of add a little extra texture that isn't too weighty. However, I ran out of staples. And I know this happens to the best of us. And here's the deal. I know that I have some replacement staples, and I have no idea where they are. They are in the special place. You know, I know that you know. The place that we put things that we don't want to forget where we put them. Well, that's where the staples are. So hopefully I'll find them soon. So I'm going to go ahead and attach this to my card base before I go ahead and put the Nuvo drops on. I've done that before. I've put the Nuvo drops on and then kind of boogered them up before I put them on the card base. So I'm just going to go ahead and assemble the card, and then I'm going to put some of the finishing touches on there. I'm going to be doing a little bit with the Nuvo drops, and I'm also going to be adding a little bit more splatter, but not with the stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and take some the Gina K Passionate Pink, and I'm just going to mash it down onto my craft mat, and I'm going to use it as my watercolor medium. So I'm just going to get some water up in my brush and just go ahead and get that brush nice and juicy with the dye-based ink, and then tap the brush onto my finger and just kind of let those splatters randomly place themselves onto the card base. And this is just going to add another extra little bit of whimsy to the card project. And when it dries really, really soft, a nice soft pink. So I'm adding some Nuvo drops to the center of the flowers, and this just helps bring out a little bit more of the black to get a nice little contrast with the sentiment. So it really does help draw your eye over to the flower because the sentiment is in the black. We've got a little bit of Nuvo drops here as accents in black, and it really does help ground the color and pop the color on the black cardstock. So here's what the final card looks like. I am super excited about it, and I hope that my friend really adores it. So I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.